This came about someone wanting a box shape for some paintings to use for their small images to use for their products on eBay, something like that. And I thought there would be a plugin for this, but I couldn't find anything. And this is using standard Gimp tools, nothing special, no special plugins, just the tools. And for eBay, you're going to need a small image. Even this might be too large for eBay, but I'm using it. It's only 300 by 260. But I'm going to work on a larger canvas. You can always crop it down later, so I'm going to copy that and paste that in. I'm doing it this way because it ends up centralized, so I'm going to put that to a new layer, and then in the layer menu I'm going to put that layer to the image size. That means I've got a nice transparent, large transparent border around that small image. Give it a name so we know what it is, and it's the box base. So on to the next step. Well, I want some guides, and a quick way of doing this is to use the alpha, color alpha to selection, to make a selection, and then in the grid menu there's a selection, a grid from selection. Get rid of the selection now. So there's 4 guides that are around the edge of my image, exactly on the edge of the image. Need a little bit of temporary work now. Just zoom in to see what's happening. As a temporary measure, I'm going to make a new transparent layer, and then I'm going to go to, it's going to be a temporary grid. To make this, I'm going to go to the filters, render, pattern and grid. Get something like that. I'm going to want a very light grey. OK, that. And the spacing, I'm going to, for this size image, I'm going to use 25. Depends on your image. And I'm using this rather than a Gimp grid because now I want to first of all rotate it. There's the rotate tool. 15 degrees for a nice isometric type angle. And I want to move this, remember we're on this temporary grid layer, and I want to move this layer. There's move the active layer, and I'm just going to position it so one grid intersection coincides with the top corner of the image. So important, keep checking your layers. We need to be on now a base layer. I'm going to put in 2 new grids, and I'm going to just drag from the ruler side 1 down, top 1 down to the next grid intersection. So we've got 1 wide strip and we've got 1 narrow strip. Selecting the sides, the wide strip, I'm going to use the rectangular select tool, and it should snap to the guides like that. Again, make sure we're on the correct layer. Now we can either use the shear tool or the perspective tool. Doesn't really matter. For this one I'm going to use the shear tool. I've lost my selection here, so I'll just put the selection in again. Rectangular selection. Snaps to the guides. Shear tool. And there's a dialog. Drag it around and you can see it changes shape. The dialog's right over the middle of it. Not a good example. But the ends, if you look at the ends, they're in line with the grey lines on the grid. Apply that. It's a floating selection, so I can move it. There it is, floating selection. Move tool, move the active grid, or move the active layer, and I can move that up a little bit into position to coincide with the original image. I've put that floating selection to a new layer, and then I've moved back down onto the base layer. Same procedure for the very small strip at the top. Shear tool, we'll zoom in a little bit to see what it looks like. Click inside it, we get the shear dialog up, but if I drag the mouse along, we can see that the end of the strip is now at the same angle as the grey grid, and again I can go and making sure we're on the move tool. I can move that layer to coincide with the original image. So it looks like that. And that's all the hard work done. I've got these as two separate layers, top strip and side strip, because if I choose the side strip, there's the side strip layer, I can reduce the brightness of this. It's a choice you make, how bright it is or how dark it is, but the top strip, again, color, brightness, but I'm going to make this bright, not dark. And that gives our image an impression of depth, boxiness. I can do a little bit of tidying up now. I can go and merge down. So there's the two strips as one. Well, I can merge, or I can get rid of my temporary grid. So I'm now left with the strips and the base image. Well, I can merge those down as well if I want to. One last operation on that, I'm going to give it a little bit of perspective. So I'm going to use the rectangular select tool. Choose that image. Add a little bit of perspective to it. One goes up, bottom goes up. Looks like that. Put that floating selection back down, just anchor it. Turn the grids off, or guides off. Looks like that. One last operation. I can go to filters, lights and shadows, put in a drop shadow, change the black to a dark grey, turn the opacity right down. Remember which direction the light's coming from. So I'm going to have to change the X value to negative. I need a -4, it's a small image, 4 is enough. But the Y I can leave as positive, but I'll change the value again to 4. OK that, and that puts a very slight drop shadow on it. You can just see it around the two edges. If I turn it off, you can see it just adds that little bit more of depth to the image. Now you can put your background on, you can put some lettering in it, whatever you want. Go and, at the end of the day, go and merge it down and post it off to eBay.